there's this tendency in our society that if we want to improve ourselves, become better, whatever that might look like, fit in more, that we have to be harsh and forceful towards ourselves, to kind of bend ourselves into shape. And we take this on, like, say we have a tendency to procrastinate. And, that causes problems for us, legitimately. But also it might be imposed from the outside, a sense that that's bad or wrong. But we try and overcome it by forcing ourselves. There's this idea, I should just stop procrastinating. I should just somehow use my mind to bend my will. Or if we get defensive in relationships, say. And again, this is a pattern maybe that causes suffering. It causes distance between you and your partner. It's not necessarily helping you out. But again, there's this idea, it's like, okay, your partner might say, just stop being defensive. Just stop it. Just put that behavior down. And we try, and again, we shame ourselves and we give ourselves reasons why we shouldn't be that way. And again, it's got this forceful, harsh attitude. And our whole society takes this approach. If you read in newspapers, how we talk about politicians or businesses or whatever, it's just everyone is just shaming everyone else, trying to force them to be different than how they are. And in case you hadn't noticed, it doesn't work very well. If shame and, forcing could make the world a better place, we would all be living in paradise by now, but we ain't. So it's time to take a closer look at this. Because always at the heart of any kind of behavioral dysfunction, quote unquote, or just something that's causing suffering from your life, there's always an emotional issue. So take procrastination, for example. That's trying to keep you safe. I've suffered from that a lot. And what I found was that at the heart of it, there was an identity that I'm not good enough. That was my shame-based identity, strong shame. Then sort of arrogance on the surface, this pride-based identity that I had. I'm actually, it was hung on the fact that I'm quite smart, quite intellectually capable. And it's like, I would weirdly then procrastinate on things because it's like, I was so attached to being smart that if I were to make a mistake, it would feel really shameful. It would damage that identity. And all the shame of not being good enough would come up. So there was a lot at stake because that shame is so painful. So I would avoid things because then if I don't try or do it, then I can't make a mistake and I won't have to feel that pain. And in the past, I felt very alone with my shame as well. I didn't feel able to reach out for help or support. And so there's a aloneness that comes with it. So in a small act of avoiding some task that I've got to complete, there's a whole load. It's like an iceberg of just difficult emotion. There's a whole load of stuff that goes with it from earlier in my life. And that's the case with a lot of different things, defensiveness in relationship. It might be that, we were taught that when we were vulnerable as kids, maybe we got rejected, maybe we got told to shut up and be quiet or just to stop crying. And that was so painful to be rejected in that way that our hearts close up. And so when our partner, tries to raise an issue with us, the heart closes going, no, I can't feel that pain again of maybe admitting that I was wrong or looking at what I might have done wrong. I cannot emphasize enough how threatening some of these emotions can feel to our nervous system. It might feel like a small thing. Oh, a bit of shame, a bit of admitting you're wrong. Like that's not that big a deal. You've got to remember these parts of us, the stuck frozen shame and that defensiveness, they're very old patterns. Those parts of us it feels like we're 5 years old or 7 years old. Those parts of us still think we're that small and vulnerable, right? So to those parts of us, it really feels like life or death. And that's why it feels somehow safer or easier and certainly more familiar just to try and criticize ourselves from the inside. And really that voice is just kind of repeating. We've learned to internalize the voice of the parents and teachers we had when we were young, who would sort of try and criticize and bend us into a shape that made us more palatable and easier to deal with for them. And then we just try and take on that same pattern and just try and bend ourselves into the shape that we want, but it doesn't work. And you don't see anyone in society modeling a healthier approach. And what I would say that is more of a self-acceptance and a curiosity. So we accept the pattern of procrastination or defensiveness within us. It's like, okay, I sometimes procrastinate. I get defensive. That's all right. That's okay. That's part of what's here. It's true. It's simply true. We're not trying to deny what's true, because that's not going to work. It's not going to get you very far. It's painful, but as you start to approach what's true and just looking at it from that lens, not as something to fix or change, but to get curious about, you can start to delve into what's actually going on, to connect to that part of you, that little kid who felt shame at making a mistake and didn't have the support that he needed to process that, or for that shame not to hang on so tightly. Or with the defensiveness, that part of us that has to close up the heart to keep at a distance from others, because if I'm vulnerable, if I'm intimate, if I'm connected to you, or if I expose, if I admit making a mistake or whatever it might be, that part of us that feels like we're going to get hurt in that, rejected, have love withdrawn, approval withdrawn. And, that love, that approval, that's what we, especially growing up, that's what we need the most. We need it almost as much as, food and air and water is love. And so these patterns are really just trying to hold on to that love. It's a cry for love, essentially, these patterns that we have. That's a good way of putting it. The defensiveness, procrastination as the examples, and all whatever other patterns you might be experiencing, could be almost anything. It's a cry for love from a part of you. And treating that part with harshness, with rejection, trying to bend it into being something that it's not, disconnects you even more from yourself. It disconnects you even more. It makes that closed heart tighten up even more. It makes that pattern of procrastination double down, because now there's even more to be afraid of. There's even more potential rejection around the corner. We're rejecting ourselves so we don't get rejected, by another person, which almost guarantees rejection. It's more like, we're trying to preempt things, but we're just making it worse, really, in a sense. And this is not to criticize it. This whole thing is very innocent, And so we don't want to repeat that original pattern. The original wound is when a part of us was rejected and treated harshly. And we're never going to be able to heal by repeating that pattern again on ourselves. We need to turn it the other way. And it's about the truth and the love. The truth is like, okay, what's here? Okay, there's a pattern of procrastination. That's the truth. Can I bring love to that? Can I bring curiosity to that? Can I bring that which I needed as a child to myself, that part of me in this moment? And what you'll find that, if you've got a piece of work, you're procrastinating, you notice the tightness in the body. Maybe there's shame underneath there. If you just spend time with it, like notice the resistance, put your attention there. See if you can let yourself feel tight, let yourself have a little cry, and you can make it, you can dive deeper. I go into detail in my other videos, like about how to feel your feelings and how to work through these triggers. So I won't go into it too much here, but just meeting those parts, they can start to soften, and a little bit more space arises in that softness. Just like, think of it this way. Imagine a child who doesn't want to do something. Imagine now if you try and force the child, visualize that child. They're upset, they're tense, they're saying no, they're digging their heels in. If you go, hey, that's enough of that. I'm not accepting that. Get on with it. You have to do it. Does that child relax into the task? No. They tense up. They freeze up even more. Maybe they shut down. Maybe they go into a rage. They cope with it in some more extreme way. Whereas if you go, get down to their level and make it okay that they don't want to do that. I understand why you don't want to do that. You might feel hurt. You might feel worried, afraid of something, and really help them to feel seen and heard. It's not guaranteed that child's going to, do that thing that you're asking them to do. But you can see there's a hell of a lot more chance. At the very least, you'll stay in connection with them. They'll feel much more safe. There'll be much more possibilities around all of that. And it's the same for these parts of you here. So it's really, it's not the harshness and the bending that's going to help you, although that feels like a tempting short-term solution. It's a little bit more difficult, a little bit more long-term, but, not repeating those same wounds and actually bringing the truth and love to yourself can really transform you over the long term. It's that relentless self-acceptance over and over again that's like an engine of transformation. It's like as you accept certain parts of you, other parts come up. As you accept them, they start changing. And it's like this sort of a virtuous circle. The vicious circle is when you're just continuous self-reject, and it goes into ever more disconnection and tension. And there's a virtuous circle as you keep accepting yourself, and you keep expanding, integrating and expanding, integrating and expanding, rather than fragmenting and separating. I do help people to feel their feelings, to work with the nervous system. So check out my work below if you're interested in that. My other videos go into more detail around how to feel different feelings and work with triggers and so on. Hope that was helpful. See you later. Bye.